各位观众朋友，大家好，欢迎收看稳定音响 YouTube 频道。那今天呢，很开心呢，我们邀请到这个英国原厂 Rel 的超低音品牌这个 Kojo 来到我们的现场哈。那今天算台湾的我们的第一站嘛哈。那今天呢，大气的代理商也陪同，然后来到我们稳定音响哈，针对的我们这些用家哈，在台湾的一些问题，想要提问这个英国原厂的 Kojo， 那可以麻烦Nina帮我翻译一下吗？
好啊，没问题。那 Welcome to come to Taiwan, and here is the Winnie YouTube channel, and we are going to ask you some questions.
Sure, thank you.
Yes,
Gladly.
OK， 好，很多用家准备要开始用这个 Rel 超低音，以及正准备要开始用，但是通常都会发现一些在使用上的一些几个问题哈。那我们会有几个问题来问这 Kojo 这边的，麻烦你再做一个简单的回答。好。
We have a lot of feedback and questions from customers, and then from our perspective, we'll ask you some questions from your side.
Okay.
好，那第一个问题呢，有谁要提问一下？OK, here.
我想请教一下，就是 Rel 原厂它使用 Speakon 接待 High Level Input 这个做法，那它的好处是什么？那为什么要这么做
？Rel subwoofers use Speakon for high-level input. What's the benefit of doing this?
Well, from the reverse then, we're using a Speakon connector because it's a very comfortable and simple solution to connect the wire into the device. It's the fastest clicking possible connection.
Yes.
But the high level itself, so the Speakon connector is just the tool for the high level connection. The high level connection is the general idea of the Rel's products, because while we're trying to create a machine that will be able to represent the musical bass at the desired speed and match most of the speakers, the solution to this comes from the first step of being able to deliver the same signal into the subwoofer that the speaker receives. So if you want to play as a whole system with the sub and the speakers, then we need to make sure that the subwoofer will be playing exactly what the speaker does. And that's where we need the signal of the amplifier with the characteristics and the character of the signal already that has gone through the amplification stage. After that, we can deliver it into the speakers and into the sub, and that'll be exactly the same signal with the same phase, with the same timing, and that's from where we can start the magic of delivering the speedy musical bass.
那个麻烦Nina翻译一下。
就是刚刚其实有提到说 Speakon 的接线方式嘛，那其实 Speakon 对串接方式来讲，它是一个比较快速也比较简便的方式去做一个连接。那当然就是 Rel Acoustic 这边会选择用 High Level 的方式，也是因为说我们需要透过 High Level Input 的方式去接收扩大机传出来的讯号，我们同时是接收主喇叭还有我们低音喇叭的讯号是接收一样的部分，因为这样才可以保持我们原本主喇叭它所传递出来的音乐的特性。主要是因为这个原因，他们才会选择去使用 High Level Input 这样子。
非常感谢。有没有第二个问题来想要提问一下 ？OK， 好。
我们扩大机有分 BTL 或非 BTL， 那有没有比较简单的方式可以去做一个分辨？那Rel的使用上有没有什么样的限制
？So we know amplifier has BTL and non-BTL. And when we're connecting subwoofer to amplifier, we need to know which one is it so we can make sure the signal goes through. So is there an easier way to tell if an amplifier is BTL or non-BTL? Is there any limits to using this method?
So in general, we were explaining all the differences between different amplifier schematics, and how the amplifier is built is influencing how do we ground the Rel. Because basically when we're using a high level connection, that is a standard speaker plus minus connection, seems like. On the other side, it is the signal and the ground connection. So we need to make sure that the subwoofer is properly grounded to avoid any harm or danger for the system. And we were, as I mentioned, and if you take a look at the Rel website, you have like a whole diagram of suggestions should you process different amplifier connections. We figured out it's becoming quite complicated for people to try to understand. They need to dig into, I have this amplifier or that amplifier, what is that exactly is my amplifier like? And so we defined like the ultimate method, which is the simplest one, is basically you always connect the hot wires to the signal. That's simple. You go with the red and yellow cables to the positive speaker outputs, and then with the black cable you just need to go to the ground. And even if you have a traditional AB class amplifier where the negative speaker terminal is grounded, or you have any other amplifier type, you can always search for the chassis ground. Mm-hmm. It's good when the amplifier manufacturer and the amplifier has the dedicated ground bolt on the back panel, which says it is the ground. Then you just you don't think about it, you just go directly to this one with the black wire. More complicated cases are when you do not have a dedicated ground on the back panel of the amplifier. And you're like, what should I do? So there's a very simple 3 steps method of connecting the rails. You connect the high level, you connect the HOTS to the signal outputs, and then you can turn up the volume on the rail a little bit and see if there is any hum in the subwoofer present. So option number 1, the subwoofer has grounded through the power socket because you plugged it into a power supply that has proper grounding. There is no hum, it's completely silent. You basically can isolate and leave the black wire floating and do not connect it at all. Second case is what we experienced yesterday. You connect the subwoofer, turn up the volume a little bit, and you can feel the 50 Hz hum coming from the driver immediately. So basically you take the black cable and you just touch any screw on the back panel of the amplifier, which will tell you which one is the chassis ground screw. Because as soon as you touch one of the screws, the hum will go away, the driver will stop, and that's where you can take a screwdriver, unscrew the screw a little bit, and put the black wire there. So this is the easiest way to figure it out, is just to touch the screws on the back panel of the amplifier and figure out which one of them is grounded. And the last but not the least, if you don't want to mess with the screws on the back panel, again, like we did it yesterday, I didn't want to unscrew any bolts. In this case, you can just simply take an RCA cable of any quality and connect it between the input on the amplifier and an unused input on the rail. So it's just the RCA coating that's being connected, and that provides the grounding. In this case, you just leave the black cable floating. Mm-hmm. If you want to do it super neat, you can put an RCA connector with a coating on the black cable of the rail and still plug it into the RCA connector of the amplifier for grounding purposes. That's it.
公干落落的，OK。
其实就是在 Rel 连接到扩大机的时候，我们各种不同的连接方式嘛。那当然也是因为扩大机的类型不太一样，所以我们也会不同的连接方式。其实我们一般建议是会用红线跟黄线的部分，就是热线嘛，去接我们所谓的正极的输出，扩大机的正极输出。那另外黑线的部分，原厂这边就是会建议说一定要做到接地，因为其实如果有接地的话，对于低音喇叭来讲，它的比较不会造成它有所谓的hum声。那像如果我们一般的状况下，我们没有接到接地的话，其实喇叭它的屏膜的部分，它其实会有一些些微的震动。那所以我们要接地的话，后面又没有怎么说？我想想。
任何的端子嘛，
对，任何端子其实是有3个方式去做这个接地的部分。因为如果后面没有螺丝的部分的话，你还可以透过我们的插座，那我们就可以透过插座的方式。那第2个就是透过后面的螺丝的端口，你可以去由黑线去接触，看任何一个螺丝的部分，它是不是可以造成它这个接地的现象产生，
也就是降低它的hum的声音。
对对对，其实主要就是看它的有没有hum声。对，那如果也没有这个螺丝的部分可以去使用的话，第3个还是
第三个是用 RCA 线，
对，他有提到说你可以拿任何一条 RCA 线，那当然一端的话是接到扩大机的 RCA 口，那另外一端就是连接到 Rel 的背板上面的 RCA 口，那这样也可以达到一个接地的效果。就是
用一条 RCA 连接扩大机跟超低音这一端，对，变成是两个外背的部分，它就共接的。对。而且他有提到，就是说你不要开太大声，开一点点的音量，先用一个微量的音量去看看它有没有动作，这样子。OK， 很好。It's a good way.
As the simplest way.
Yeah, simplest.
And the prettiest.
Yeah. OK， 那第三个问题啊，来听这边。
Rel 这个收音它为什么会使用堆叠？有这个想法？那这个想法是从哪里来的？然后这个是好处是什么？
Why does Rel subwoofers S series use stacking as a method? What's the benefit of using stacking, and what is the idea behind stacking subwoofers?
So, well, the idea behind the stacks of subwoofers comes way from the Pro Audio roots. Where you're creating stacks of speakers to deliver the right impact and the right sound quality that you want to. The idea of stacking the subs at home is basically to lift the bass from the floor, as simple as that. So when your speaker is playing and your speaker has a physical size, so you have the width of your soundstage and you have the height of your soundstage. And these are the dimensions that you can measure by hearing, by listening. When you're using a proper bass support in case of the Rels, and we're talking about stereo pair of Rels at first. So when you're using a stereo pair of Rels, you make each channel completely full range, and you are transferring full energy between the left and the right stereo channels in the full range. Basically, what you do, if you have a pair of speakers and you put two Rels aside, you're extending your soundstage into the width. Although you have a non-directional source, so you do not know from where the bass comes, you still have the energy support that is on the low level of the speaker. So basically, you empower the bass section of the speaker. When you stack up the subs, you deliver extra energy from the second and the third level, and basically you create an energy support for the entire speaker, including the mid-range and the high frequencies, which is extremely important to give the perfect balance and to make an impression that the sound really comes from the space, not only like from the floor and up, but as well as from the height, from the middle, and from the floor in even proportions. And that creates a completely fair soundstage that is wide and high at the same time, with even energetic separation between the sources.
那 Rel 其实会有这样的构想，也是因为他们觉得说声音其实应该要从正确的位置去发声出来。就比如说我们一般的落地式的喇叭，它其实也是有分低音，然后中音跟高音的部分嘛，它自己也是有板制。那当然通常我们的观念是来讲是低音是没有指向性的，所以是不是只要我们有摆一支低音，整个空间就会充满低音？其实这样的想法是没有错误的，因为其实低频它如果放在地上的话，它就是做一个宽度的延伸。那如果你想要有一个高度的延伸，应该要怎么做？所以他们就是在思考这个问题之后，他们得出的答案就是说，他们可以用堆叠的方式去进行到这个高度的延伸。那比如说他们最底下的这个低音喇叭的话，就是它是负责所有低音的最深层的感觉。那中间的这个低音喇叭的部分，它会负责量感的部分，它会 support 到我们主喇叭的中音的位置。那最高的第三个位置的这个低音喇叭的部分，它其实是辅助我们高音中的低音。那也是为什么说堆叠之后，你可以感受到更多空间上的量感的增加，因为它其实是从不同的位置去发出低音给客户，这样子。
对，OK。因为之前我们有做过这样的实验哦，的确就是整个低音它的三节的部分，每一个位置，其实每一个低音都是刻度都是不一样的。然后透过这样的话，可以展开这种左右的宽度跟深度的那种3D 的延伸感，其实是我们是实际感受到，真的如他们所讲的，可以帮我们翻译一下。
Because I just explained that the different real subwoofer will provide different sound stage, right?
Yeah.
And they have still the experience, and they really feel that the different subwoofer will provide the different sound stage. So they think it's a good
Solution.
solution for the.
Yeah. So the 212SX, for example, it's also a stack. It's just a little smaller size of a stack, and it's like completed in one box. So this is kind of a all-in-one solution. If you don't want to build a 3-pack and go by layers, you just put a 212. You don't need to set it up. So this is like the intermediate solution between a single on-the-floor subwoofer and a full-line array.
Yes. 好，那我们再开放一个问题。
目前市场上有那么多超低音品牌，那 Rel 的优势是什么？然后为什么要选择 Rel？
With so many subwoofers on the market, why should we choose Rel as a subwoofer brand, and what are the advantages that provide to the customers?
Well, I think that's the 32 years of experience that Rel has in building musical subwoofers, specializing in stereo solutions, is definitely making Rel quite a unique brand in the subwoofer market. It's the only, I would say it's the only subwoofer brand that's really capable of playing music at really high-end levels. And that's what we're well recognized for. So if you want to add the non-existent low frequencies and make your system as full range as possible, this is the best possible solution. And then for the home theater market, we have our own approach where you can use the high level and the LFE inputs at the same time. And you can separate the dynamics and you can separate the functions of the subwoofer between reproducing the speaker bass and the theater low frequency effect channel. So it also gives a different perspective of insight on how a home theater can be built and can take us closer to a big movie theater standard at home without compromising on cutting all the frequencies out of the speakers. So this is also one of the things that makes us quite strong in the market, to be able to present theater systems that will have really high resolutions and they don't require to be played always loud to be efficient and impressive. We kind of found our way into the world, and Rel is like extremely growing in the latest years, especially when social media marketing resources and interaction between users and exchanging experience and opinions have grown a lot. That is a good thing for us because it creates a snowball, because somebody tests the Rel product, likes it, can share the impression, and then people can know about it. Back in the years, we had to fly directly to the market, meet with the distributor, meet with all the dealers, and with press, and it was a direct dependency on how many people we actually met live and have been able to show the Rel products. Now it's a little easier because the word can spread itself, and it's a good thing for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
好，那就是其实这是 Rel 目前成立下来到现在，今年2022年它是第32个年头嘛。那如果你没有注意到的话，他们今年其实也有推出一个新的型号叫 Number 32，里面有加注很多他们新的一些技术。
是。
那他刚刚有特别提到说，家庭剧院的部分可以同时在 High Level 跟 LFE 的情况下，他们是可以同时去做使用的，所以你不用去做太多的切换，你就可以很轻易的在你的家同时享受2声道的音响系统，也同时使用到你的家庭剧院的系统。那也是非常的感谢，像现在我那个赖老板也是透过 YouTube 频道跟很多在台湾的非台湾地区的就是观众去做一些互动嘛。那对 Rel 来讲也是如此，因为比如说像 John Hunter 他就拍了很多影片，那很多我们台湾的客人也会透过影片去认识到 Rel 这个品牌。所以相较于以前他们需要去飞到各个国家去跟大家去做介绍推广，其实现在更容易的方式就是透过影片的介绍，然后大家在影片上面去讨论说Rel 现在又研发了什么新的产品，哪里可以试听。所以他们也是透过这样的方式，所以也有让更多人可以认识到 Rel 的品牌这样子。
其实我们这几年这样用下来，很多算是 high end 2声道的客人，还有剧院的用家 他们可能在低音的上面的问题都非常的困扰。其实 Rel 提供这样的方式，大概前后快10年哈，它的牌子这样子用就觉得很好用啊。你要电影就可以用电影，然后你要2声道就2声道，所以这个是一个非常好的一个解决方式。然后最后换我提问，我最后提问一个问题哈，就是我们的超低音一般都是4个角，它为什么设计是像这样一个协和的这种方式，跟市场上有什么不一样？
Okay, so usually subwoofers have four set of feet standing up, but Rel subwoofers use like a very long 2 feet design. And then we would like to ask, why is this approach, and what's the difference between other subwoofers from the market doing this?
Well, first of all, we call these rails, which they are. We started using rails in our series and reference models quite recently. We think this is a more steady way to put the subwoofer on the floor, so you are less dependent from uneven surfaces, so you don't need to do further adjustments. Also, it's a universal way. If you dig back into the history and you remember the Gibraltars, the G1 and the G2 models, they had standard feet, but then when we were building a stack, you need to turn the subwoofer around, unmount the feet, put special stacking rails on it. And it turned out that, well, you don't have to do that. You can put the rails from the start, and you can use both rails for V-stacking purpose and for floor placement. But also because, well, another really important thing is that on rails that are being put underneath the subwoofer, so because they have bigger surface, you can put them deeper under the cabinet, so the subwoofer just looks better because it kind of floats on the floor. You don't really see a lot of feet around. But the important reason is that sonically, because you have a slave drive down there, you have a flat membrane, and it's tuned for a certainly low frequency, you want it to be phase aligned with the active driver and with the rest of the subwoofer design. So if you take a look at the rail, it also goes around the passive driver, and it's a thick solid rail. And basically this is kind of a preventing mechanism, so the sound from the passive driver goes directly straight and backwards and is phase aligned much better with the active drivers, disallowing the sound from the passive to go really sideways from the subwoofer with uncontrolled reflections. So that's a multi-purpose tool.
其实在以前旧有的设计 G1 的时候，他们也是用做4个角。
4个角，对。
那因为他们后来发现，在堆叠上面的时候，其实会蛮容易造成一些困扰，因为你有可能是需要把喇叭的部分先翻倒过来，然后再把脚垫的部分去做调整之后，才可以做堆叠。所以他们有在研发出这个新的设计，那它是做一个比较弧形状的设计。它在堆叠上来讲，它就不需要再去做额外的一些功能，它就可以直接放置上去。那当然，它还有一个额外的附加功能是说，如果你有注意到的话，它其实有做一个稍微内缩的设计，美观上来讲是更好看的。然后他们也是说，这样的设计也是为了辅助他们底下其实是有一个背俯式的，那他们在震动的时候，他们其实是会让空气是从正确的方向流出。那他们是希望说他们的声音是从正面跟后面去做流出，
算是他们自己本身开发的一个过程当中的一个演化。对。那我们今天的问题就大概这边啦。那最后要不要请 Kira 帮我们讲想法或建议这样子
？Wrapping up, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience that you would like to express about Rails, and what's your thoughts on this?
Oh well. Well, first of all, I would like to thank everybody in Taiwan who is already familiar and using the Rel products. Thank to our partners here, because I think in the past few years, Rel has become more and more recognized, and we are happy that we are able to deliver our philosophy and deliver what we do here in the market, and to be able to provide Rels into the great sounding systems. We are just in general really happy with the feedback, and we're really grateful for that. In perspective of the systems and the subwoofers, we will try to keep on working on the products that will be better and better.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, in my concern, the only thing I probably want to add as a suggestion, if somebody has not explored the opportunity of using Rels in stereo pairs comparing to one subwoofer, that is a great big difference. And it's much more important than just, for us to be offering 2 subwoofers instead of 1. It is a fair instrument how to really get the best out of the system. So for many years now, we are really highly recommending using stereo pairs of Rels of any caliber comparing to 1 subwoofer, because this just gives a really better result.
首先要谢谢 Rel 品牌的一些顾客啦，那就是提供的一些建议啊，或者是有这样的一些意见 ，Rel 才会研发越来越多新的产品给大家做使用嘛。是希望说，如果目前家中是有使用一个超低音喇叭的顾客的话，他们也会希望说，可以让他们去体验到使用一对超低音喇叭的差异是什么。真的有很多就是他们的客人在试听之后会发现，其实加了1颗超低音跟1对超低音的听感上面是差异非常大的。所以他也强烈建议说，目前有这样的需求的客人也可以联络一下文丽的赖老板这边来做试听这样子。
那因为我们传统的观念超低音都是家庭剧院都会用1支来解决嘛，那特别是说在我们 high end 的这个市场，真的你要用2支那个做起来的音场的效果才会比较好。那我们今天也谢谢这个 Curious 今天来到我们这边，我们今天就先到这边，那我们就继续就大家逛一逛聊一聊这样子 ，OK， 好，我们掌声鼓励，谢谢你们。
Thank you very much. Thank you.